Hi, I'm Dr. Jerry Anderson, chiropractic physician. Thanks for watching us on The Learning Curve. I'm here with my associate and good friend, Dr. Brad Shapiro. Dr. Brad, welcome back to The Learning Curve.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What's on your mind today?
Well, I was just thinking about some different things that I've been coming across lately. I recently came across an episode on Dr. Oz where they were talking about functional medicine and just the impact it's having on the way healthcare is done, some of the new ways of looking at healthcare. Also read a Bruce Lipton article not too long ago. He, among other things, he commented on how the new medical model is the old chiropractic philosophy.
Yeah.
And just for those of you guys that don't know, Bruce Lipton, he's a well-known neurologist. He is done a lot of research. He was a medical professor that now primarily lectures to chiropractors. So he's just a guy with a lot of credibility. And so long story short, there's a lot of buzz in healthcare right now of just the new cutting edge way of looking at things. And from what I've learned and from what I've seen, especially with background in chiropractic, a lot of these things have been around for a long time, but they're presented as if there's something new. And I know you've been a chiropractor for 26 years?
Yes, this is going to get me started, isn't it?
Yeah,
this is
so
going
I'd
to
love
kick
to
me over the edge.
I'd love to hear everything you can.
All right. The
think
first thing I've got to say is do not attempt this at home. In other words, we've got a standard disclaimer, folks. When you hear what we're talking about, when you see what we're telling you, don't misunderstand. We want you to get care from the physician of your choice, whether it's a chiropractic physician like Dr. Shapiro and me, a medical doctor, osteopathic physician, nurse practitioner. If you have a health problem that needs personalized attention, get that and do it as soon as you can. Do it in a timely fashion, as we say, so that you stand a better chance of getting some good results. But in the meantime, we love to raise people's consciousness about what we do, chiropractic. And let me tell you, the functional medicine, hey, listen, welcome to the club, guys. I'm so happy that mainstream medicine is finally coming around. It's just that I wish they'd just come out and say, the chiropractors have been doing this for a few decades. Maybe we were kind of wrong about our approach to chiropractic, particularly the well-documented but not well-known attempt by the American Medical Association to contain, eliminate, and destroy the chiropractic profession. Thank you very much. At any rate, the mainstream medical community really needs to get with it. And don't think for a minute that we do not appreciate or admire and are very thankful for good medical doctors, pharmaceuticals, drugs when they're appropriate. It's just that, thank God for chiropractic too, because it does things that medicine simply cannot do. My analogy is pretty simple. It's like the idea that there is a pill for everything, or that the only legitimate form of treatment is drugs, is sort of like saying, well, gosh, here's a pill that I can put in my gas tank that will balance my tires and line them up. It just doesn't work. Now, I know that's a little simplistic, but it's about that way. There are times when the best route to good health, good functioning of the human body is a chiropractic adjustment, and that's just the way it is. The word is out, and there's so many people that understand this. It's hard to imagine chiropractic not getting to people these days, people not being able to get to the chiropractor, except for one thing. There are vested interests in the insurance, pharmaceuticals, medical industries that want to do it with drugs.
Absolutely.
They're not too friendly to the idea of doing it without drugs, and they really need to think that over, But anyway, your comments.
Well, it's just like you said, there's some vested interests, there's some dogma, as you like to say.
Yeah.
And I think we're both of the opinion of, let's just pull the fact that we're chiropractors out of the picture, and let's just look at things objectively and really think about what's appropriate given the circumstances versus creating bias.
This is exactly what we try to do. We try to be objective for one big reason, and that is the safety and the good outcome, the good effect for our patients. You know, we obviously, all of us in healthcare, we got an ego, you know. Yeah. We just want to ride herd on it. We want to keep that well contained so that if there's something that I don't know or you don't know, we want to get our patient to somebody who does know how to manage that situation as soon as we possibly can for the sake of the patient. I want mainstream medicine to do the same thing. I want them to reciprocate when they see something that just doesn't add up. And one of the most famous things, of course, is that we've talked about is the rib subluxation. In other words, a rib joint is inflamed and is irritating the nerve enough that it can actually create chest pain up front. Sure. Yeah, coming from your back to your chest. And it's structural in nature. It's not the heart. And so we've seen issues where the patient will go into the medical setting, the emergency room, whatever, get many $1,000s workup, and then they say, well, nothing wrong with your heart. But doc, my chest is still killing me. Yeah, that's the way it works. It's a chiropractic solution that's needed in instances like that or many others. I
was just recently at a seminar not too long ago, and the guy put up a lot of different statistics, and he was talking about lab results and some of those types of procedures and the whole process of looking at MRIs and x-rays and all this stuff. And with MRIs, they only pick up something, I think 1 out of 11,000 and something instances. So the vast majority of the time, just nothing comes out of it. So anytime you can come up with other solutions versus putting the time and expense into those really expensive procedures, well, now, why not exhaust your other options first?
Let's enlarge on that just a little bit. In other words, there are so many things that the MRI can miss. Mm-hmm. Did they go into any elaboration on that, any reasons?
Well, it's just things have to be progressed to a certain degree before they can be visually seen. You know, it's the same with MRIs, it's the same with CAT scans, and so if you can do a simple, thorough examination, a physical examination, pick up on things, correct the issue, even if it's as simple as doing a quick high velocity adjustment on a rib. Well, that's a better option.
We've got a good orthopedic surgeon right here in Winchester, Tennessee, from which this broadcast originates, who once told me, he said, he complimented me, he said, hey, how is it that you keep nailing the level that needs surgery? I'd had to refer some patients. There are times when the surgical solution is necessary, and that's just it. And in each of the cases in which I had referred a patient to the surgeon, he was kind of puzzled. He said, how did the chiropractor figure out that it's an L4 disc on the left side there? I mean, without an MRI. And I explained to him, our method of analyzing things and how it increases the likelihood of figuring out where it is. And I said something, we got to do this because there's a false positive rate, high false positive rate in CT scan. And he said, yeah, MRI is even worse, but how do you know this? Mm-hmm. I said, well, doc, I went to school. My education meets or exceeds minimum medical school requirements, professional school requirements. He said, yeah, but you don't have a hospital residency. I said, you're right, we don't. And so I defer a lot of times to a good medical doctor when it comes to infectious disease. But even in those instances, we like to try to stay ahead of the game there. And it's not that we don't believe that germs cause disease. It's just that we think a good, strong, healthy immune system kind of eliminates the need for some of the worries there,
Absolutely.
Anyway, I see our very astute producer, Will Rudder, is giving a signal that it's about time to end this segment. So let me take us out with this. We will be back with another segment here in just a moment, and I think I'm going to talk about medical history a little bit. Hi, I'm Dr. Jerry Anderson, and welcome to another segment of The Learning Curve. Thanks for watching us. Incidentally, when you watch one of these programs, we want you to understand our standard disclaimer. We don't want you to delay getting health care from the health provider of your choice. Do it in a timely fashion. Hurry up and do it. If you got a health problem, get care that is tailored to your needs as soon as possible so that you have a better chance at a good outcome. But Dr. Brad Shapiro is with me, and we are continuing with this discussion. Do you remember Ignaz Semmelweis? Remember that story?
You talking about the hearing or?
No, this is the guy, this is many years ago. He came up with the crazy notion that doctors ought to wash their hands.
Oh, sure,
You
yes.
remember? Yeah, okay. This, anyway, yeah, what an interesting idea. He came up with the idea because he noticed that when he washed his hands before childbirth, delivering children, or doing some kind of surgery or something, the patient tended to live. You know, they lived more often than developing childbirth fever and dying as a result. And so he thought, there must be a connection. I wash my hands, the patient doesn't get sick. And so he observed this, and this is really very observant, you know, in this chapter of medicine, this history of medicine. What he got for his trouble was absolute ostracism, absolute ridicule from his fellow medical practitioners, ridiculed into an insane asylum where he died, broke, and discredited, according to some versions of the story. And what a terrible thing. But it's a good point, because mainstream medicine has tended to have, in its history, a tendency to ridicule, to ignore, to ostracize, to destroy that which it does not agree with, and then later resurrect it. You know, oh, look what we discovered.
My dad likes to call that rewriting history.
Well, you know, this is really, in a strange way, kind of human nature, I guess, because I remember a study that I read in Reader's Digest many years ago, many years ago, a study that was done on kindergarten children. And in the little groups that they formed to play, there was usually a dominant kid. You know, he sort of led the pack, you know, and everybody sort of did what this kid wanted to do, playing, this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And when a member of this group, who was not the dominant child, came up with an idea, the typical tendency of the dominant child in the little play group there was to laugh at, that is, ridicule, this new idea until the other kids, yeah, that's a stupid idea, you know. And then later, the dominant child, after this idea had been forgotten long enough, would resurrect it. It's his own idea or her own idea. Look what I discovered. You know, that is a really sad thing in a way, particularly when that kind of behavior persists into adulthood, permeates our society, you might say. But that is exactly what seems to be the case even today. A lot of reasons for that, I guess. Vested interest, economic interests, ego-orientated behavior, you know.
Yep.
But anyway, kick it around a little bit. What are your thoughts on that kind of behavior, and how do we correct it?
Well, I think shows like this, in terms of correcting it, this is the best thing we can do. Just offer people good information. I think that, you know, what's got to happen is we got to quit burying our heads in the sand, you know, and not looking at things objectively. And I think that's all I'm ever for. And I think that's something you're for as well. It's just, let's just be honest. Let's not pretend that things don't exist.
Right.
And just look at these things objectively.
Well, this is for the sake of our patients, because I don't want people to have to experience what I did, and that is in terms of the delay of getting chiropractic care. Honestly, Dr. Shapiro, I needed it from infancy. Mm-hmm. If I could have found a good chiropractor, if a good chiropractor had existed, you know what? We need a time machine.
Oh, my.
So you can go back in time and see, well, here's little Jerry, you know, and he obviously needs to be off the milk that is toxic to him, that is killing him.
Yeah.
And let's see, a little spinal curvature developing here, a little chiropractic in order.
Oh, absolutely.
But
my son's a perfect example of that.
Oh, absolutely.
He got adjusted day one, and I think he's had 2 fevers. He's never had an ear infection. He's never had to take drops for gas, never had to take children's Tylenol, never had just a whole host of the things that you typically associate with kids.
Incidentally, currently, pediatricians who who know what they're doing, I guess is the only way to put it, are recommending very strongly that antibiotics be avoided in children under 3 years old unless it's absolutely necessary, life-threatening type situation.
Sure.
And it's because antibiotics introduced into their system too early in life tends to screw up their development of their own immunity. Not good. But anyway, yeah, just I'm sure that our viewers are thinking, wait a minute, is this guy taking his kid, his infant, and going, what, what, how do you do? I mean, seriously, honestly, a lot of people know nothing about how chiropractic really works.
I like to jump off the top rope.
Right, jump off the top rope, huh? But how did you adjust, Jackson?
Real low force, real slight movements. I mean, it doesn't take much for a kid. I just did a little finger thing.
Thumb pressure,
Just really more of a pressure type deal.
Yeah.
But it can make a tremendous difference. And without getting a lot into how this stuff works, your nervous system depends on sensory input. And so by me just giving a little bit of sensation into the nervous system, then his body was able to take it from there.
Did we talk about this last time, the story of the boy, the infant that developed the nausea and intestinal? This was a story that was told by Dr. Rising, one of the ladies that was in my class, and her husband was a chiropractor. And the child that became a patient had fallen off the bed and gotten hurt, but they didn't associate that. The kid's mother was a nurse, incidentally. They didn't associate that fall with the onset of nausea and diarrhea that couldn't be controlled. This went on for about 6 weeks, and as you know or may know, the potential for dehydration and death in an infant is a pretty big deal. And so, at any rate, they tried every allopathic, that is drug solution. Nothing worked. And finally the father said, I'm taking the kid to my chiropractor. And the mother and nurse said, no, you're not. He said, look, our son is near death. I'm taking him to the chiropractor. He's going to die if we don't get this fixed. Took him to the chiropractor. The chiropractor, Dr. Rising, adjusted the kid, and sure enough, he got well instantly.
Wow.
I mean, instantly. The nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea stopped. Now, you might say, well, good. How is this possible? Well, it's kind of simple. The infant nervous system is not well developed. And if you've got something wrong with it, it tends to have a much more pronounced reaction. And I remembered this, and when I got into practice, it wasn't exactly the same thing, but a lady brought her young son in. He's about 1.5 years old, and walking around and having a good time most of the time, except now he was crying all the time. She hadn't slept in a month. She said, can you do anything? Thought back to the story. I said, yeah, let's take a look. Sure enough, mid-back subluxation. We fixed it. The kid quit crying. She was able to get some sleep for the first time in about a month.
Wow.
Yeah. And this sort of thing happens. People need to know this. They need to understand it. And so I'm kind of glad that Dr. Oz, is talking about this kind of functional medicine and stuff. And Dr. Bruce Limpton, the neurologist and lecturer, medical school teacher, is saying, hey, the chiropractors had it right long ago. I'm kind of glad that they're saying that. It's just that I wish I could see it on all the networks next to the pharmaceutical commercials. And don't get me wrong, thank God for the good medical doctors and the drugs when you got to have them. Thank God for them. But we need this stuff too.
We need an even playing field.
Well, I'll tell you what, we need to close out this segment. We'll be back, however, with another few moments on the learning curve, so stay tuned. Hello, I'm Dr. Jerry Anderson, and welcome as we do another segment of The Learning Curve. Thanks for watching, and thanks for joining also Dr. Brad Shapiro.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. And we have talked in earlier segments about functional medicine and how Dr. Oz of late is talking about it. Let me inject, though, our standard disclaimer to a viewer who might have just tuned in. If you have a health problem that needs attention from a health professional, please get help from the health professional of your choice, whether it's a chiropractor like Dr. Shapiro or me, medical doctor, osteopathic physician, nurse practitioner, whatever. We want you to get help and get it tailored to your needs, and hurry up and do it. Do it in a timely fashion so that you stand a better chance of getting well.
Absolutely.
But anyway, in the meantime, we talked a little bit earlier about Dr. Oz and some of the concepts of functional medicine. Why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, they're starting to realize now that health's a whole lot more dynamic than they've thought in the past. They not only care whether or not you have a disease, but they want to know what's your blood pressure like, what's your energy like, what's your digestion like. Instead of separating things like obesity and diabetes entirely, they're starting to realize that, hey, these things might intertwine a little bit. And so what this movement's about in terms of functional medicine is just looking at things way more dynamically, realizing that nutrition can play a huge role, the alignment of the body can play a huge role, and just realizing that, hey, medicine is awesome when it's necessary, but there's more to health than just a pill or just a medication or just a surgery.
Can I go crazy for just a minute?
Please do.
Our very astute young producer, Will Rudder, was telling us about one of his favorite comedians who does a bit on chiropractic, and the guy talks about these chiropractors, man, they're just a crazy, man. You know, it's like you've got to adjust the left ankle in order for the ear to work right, and all this, you know. Well, you know, if you ever see someone with acupuncture, you know, they're getting acupuncture done in some strange places, you know, compared to where the hurt actually is.
Sure.
And it's sort of like that with chiropractic. In fact, the original chiropractic patient, Harvey Lillard, you know, with D.D. Palmer, that all came about when suddenly this guy who was hard of hearing, D.D. Palmer says, you know, this just doesn't look like it's in the right place. You mind if I push on this? Whack, you know. And anyway, the comedian says, the chiropractors just loved the noise. And I think back to one of my favorite teachers, a chiropractic teacher, a great guy who does fantastic foot, ankle, knee, wrist, elbow, shoulder type stuff, Dr. Mark Charette. And at his lectures, he's a comedian too. He's going around saying, I just love to pop things here. May I pop your knee? You know, this sort of thing. He is great, but I mean, seriously, the guy is really a wonderful doctor. He's done some incredible things. In fact, he talks about the hospital in California where he was invited to work for a while. Then they had to get rid of him. They weren't getting enough knee surgeries. Just not enough knee surgery, so that they sent him packing. But anyway, the guy's a great lecturer, and his techniques are wonderful. And I've tried to use many of the things that he does. In fact, at Anderson Chiropractic, I kind of got into working on the shoulder, and Dr. Charette says, you know, what is the most dreaded joint in the shoulder? I mean, in the chiropractic office, the shoulder, because a lot of chiropractors don't like that. Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of had to like it because I had a shoulder problem, had to figure out what was wrong with myself. And,
sure.
But anyway, it was just kind of funny hearing Will talking about the comedian doing the shtick on chiropractic. But anyway, you got to have a little humor.
Oh, absolutely. Can't stop having a good time.
Well, you know, a good humor, that's good medicine.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
good chiropractic too, I might add. Chuck Yeager said the way to stay healthy is have a little bit of fun at least every day.
Sure.
But anyway, please feel free to enlarge on the conversation here.
Well, I just, like the comedian was saying, you know, I got to pop your ear to affect your knee. And, you know, it's put in a real humorous way, but it's a great example of, you know, again, looking at the body globally, realizing that everything's connected, nutrition, the structure of the body. If somebody does have a knee problem, the real issue could be in their hips, because if their hips are misaligned, they're going to carry weight unevenly.
Exactly.
And just, you know, really looking at these things in a dynamic way, realizing that different doctors, different approaches can all come together to really benefit patients and healthcare in large.
Well, another reason that we like to do this program, we want public understanding and public perception to enlarge. That knee problem can be secondary to a hip problem.
Sure. That
is actually secondary to something wrong in the upper cervical spine, which, if not corrected, the problem just doesn't go away.
It's like the old song, the neck bone's connected.
Yeah, exactly. Chiropractors know this. And I tell you, the thing that really worries me and makes me really want to make the public understand about this, Medicare was talking in a recent thing that they published online. Now, if it's a back problem that doesn't involve your neck, now we're not going to pay if you adjust the neck, you know, this attitude. I'm thinking, what are these people doing making these kind of pronouncements? They know nothing about how chiropractic actually works, and they're making these kind of pronouncements. Well, what this may lead to is the idea that insurance companies and Medicare or some other remote bureaucrat is going to decide what works, you know, and we'll pay for this, but we won't pay for that. And I say, well, wait a minute, I fixed the patient. He or she, they're delighted, they're happy, they're well now. What do you say to that? Well, still, if you didn't do it this way, we're not paying. What kind of idiocy is this? It's like I've seen in TennCare, now called Blue Care, how they're paying for a drug or 5 drugs that don't work. The patient finally finds one that does work. Her doctor and the patient find, finally the drug that works, but they won't pay for that one. Well, what is wrong with this picture?
Yeah, it's just one of the points you brought up is the idea of people, whether or not they're qualified to make some of these calls. You know, there's some people, given their backgrounds, that they're about as qualified to direct chiropractic care as you and I are to fly the next U.S. space shuttle. Of course, you'd probably be able to do that with your background as an airline pilot. But
well, actually, I wasn't an airline pilot, but I do have a commercial rating, since I've got it at age 19. Believe it or not, I was an overachiever. But the really big stuff I've never gotten to fly. But we've got a patient who has promised to get me some simulator time sooner or later. Cool. In fact, I need to call him. I'm glad I thought of that. But anyway, how are we doing on time for this segment, Will? We've got about 3 minutes remaining. And Dr. Shapiro, I keep wanting to stress this. We love and appreciate and thank God for good medical doctors and for drugs when they are appropriate. It's just that there is such an overuse of drugs. There is such an overuse of things that, man, if we've got a solution that works better, faster, cheaper, and safer, why not investigate this? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's no question. Why not look at things objectively and just think about what's appropriate for the situation? You know, and one thing I loved about my experience at the multidisciplinary clinic in Chattanooga was serving as the clinic director. You know, I was the first person to see patients on the first and second visit. And so what that did is let's forget it's me and let's just think about it's a chiropractor that's first. It's less invasive, it's more natural. Why not exhaust those types of options first before you go down other paths?
Well, we've all heard these stories of how the mechanic overhauled the engine and then found that the gas tank was empty. That's why the engine wouldn't run. Why not try the cheap and easy, the simple and the safe stuff? Check the big stuff first, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it only makes sense.
But anyway, we keep stressing this in these programs, and it's because we want people to understand and have available to them something that may make their life, their quality of life so much better, as it did with me as the patient, growing up very sick, waiting till I was age 20 before I, on my own, went to a chiropractor. What an incredible, incredible story. Well, we don't have time to get into that right now, but it was.
Yeah, and think about the courage that you had to demonstrate, because you did have to go against the grain to a certain extent as a patient, because a lot of people were not telling you that was the best option.
This is true.
But you had to look at things objectively, kind of do your own research.
Well, Dr. Brad, I'll ease into the closing of the segment with this. The words of Dr. Gordon Turner, my medical doctor, flight physician, who said, are you going to a chiropractor? What, and you're better? He said, well, that's great, Jerry. He said, just make sure you got a good one. A bad chiropractor can hurt you just like a bad MD can hurt you. He said, but a good chiropractor can take care of a lot of things. But, he said, please don't quote me on this. I don't want to lose my license to practice medicine. This is 1971. The game was on. At any rate, we'll get into that the next time. Thank you so much for watching us on The Learning Curve. Tune in again next time.